Hello, and welcome to the Miguel Sanchez universe, where we help make your ideas reality. Today's episode, I'm going to talk about branding. Branding, not in the personal brand, but in the business branding. I posted something the other night, and a bunch of people reached out and asked me about branding. So I said, you know what? Maybe today I start talking about it. Over time, I'm going to go over this because it's one of the most important things in business and in personal, I believe, too. I believe, in the next 10 years, all that's really going to matter is brand and technology. What that means is if you have a technology that nobody else has, you're going to win, right? If you can do something that not a lot of people can, then people are going to have to use you. Or you have a very good brand. It could be a personal brand or a business brand, because then people will want to use you, right? So it's either people want to use you or they have to use you. Everything else is going to be a commodity, and it's going to be a fight to the bottom, of pricing and doing stuff for less because you're trying to, accumulate customers. So the one that's easiest to control and to do is branding. Technology is definitely hard to create something that people need and need from you only. There's definitely going to be people doing that, but that is a very, very different path. What branding takes is it takes for you to start just understanding what it is and then start implementing it, right? So even for myself, I'm definitely studying it for personal branding and then for business branding. So the way I like to tell people branding breaks down is in three parts, right? There's the visual of the brand, so that's like the logo, the website, any design. There's the text of the logo, of the brand, which is like writing and how your brand is spoken about and in words, pretty much. And then there's the feeling of the brand. So that means when people interact with the brand, does it stay in line with what you want? So branding has those three parts, and if you drop any of one of those three, you lose that brand. So I'll give you some examples, right? Apple is a brand that is about creativity. It's about high level, right? So if you walked into an Apple store and they treated you like crap, you wouldn't keep that same mindset about Apple, right? You like let's say if you walked into Apple and they treated you like they treat you in Best Buy. They don't talk to you. You walk around, you gotta find someone, right? But Best Buy's brand is not that. Best Buy's brand is cheapest price, or you can come in there and find something quick, maybe, maybe not, and walk out, But Apple is about is a higher level of customer service, it's a higher level of product, it's a higher level of imagery, video. Everything they do is at a higher level to keep that brand, right? But the brand on those three pillars is backed by a story, right? So what do you tell yourself when you see the Apple logo or the Best Buy logo or the McDonald's logo or whatever logo? That's what a brand starts at, right? Like there's a story that these companies want you to tell yourself when you see their logo. And that story can be controlled by them or you. There's actually a really good book called Branding Basics for Small Businesses. And I'm not sure if it was in that book or another book I read. I get them mixed up now. But it was talking about Ferrari at one point. Ferrari had a problem with their brand because people saw people that drove Ferraris as assholes because they were flaunting their success. and Ferrari had to figure out how to change that. So the first thing they had to do was assess what people thought about their brand, right? You can create the narrative of your brand or let people create it, right? So that's where you have to start thinking about what do you want people to think when they see your company logo or your personal or your face, right? If you're doing personal brand, which I'm really trying to get started right now. So I'm learning the difference between business brand and personal brand. So in a business brand, you want people to understand what you want the story to be when they see your logo. And then the key thing is what you want them to be saying about themselves when they use your product, right? So like, for instance, people in the creative field, they use a Mac, right? And if they have a PC, some creatives look down on them. It's like, oh, yeah, are you really a creative? And it's all created through, Apple's branding and then people taking on that brand. Of course, there's creatives that use PCs, but it's funny how you start to see people develop the story so for you as a brand. And when they wear the Apple Watch, what is it telling the world about them when they wear Chanel? So I had a very through personal branding, I was able to work with Chanel, Louis Vuitton, like very closely. How that happened was I was on stage telling my story, right? And then I explained what I believed had to happen in the major corporations around the world. What I said was, I believe technology is moving so fast that if you are not testing the latest technologies, some smaller company could come along and take your lunch. And no matter how big you became, a technology could come along that grows a company so fast, and the history shows it with the Amazons of the world. Even right now, there's all kind of articles saying that billion-dollar companies have never been created faster, mostly because of technology and the access to consumers. So I said this, and I was talking about a new technology called mixed reality, and I was explaining why I believe this technology will be the future. Of course, it's not here right now, but in time it will be. And if you're not testing how your brand can live on these platforms, it's a mistake. So I was in some meetup. I was giving my speech. I was showing slides, and then after the meetup was over, a woman walks up to me, and she happens to be the head of the jewelry division of Chanel. And she tells me, what you said is exactly what I need you to tell my boss. And I'm thinking in my head, you mean your boss at Chanel? Like, and so she brought me in, like board meeting level stuff. And I'm like telling the people of Chanel, like, what I believe, and they listened. So what started to happen was they started to take me down their brand story and how the Chanel brand was created. And it was super interesting because I guarantee most people do not know the Chanel brand story. But if they could buy a Chanel bag, they would, right? And how does that happen? That happens because in the beginning, they started out with this story. The story, just so I can say it really quickly, is there's a woman named Coco Chanel. She has something called the Chanel House Rules. And what that means is everything in Chanel has to follow these brand rules. And they are based on her story. Like, for instance, she loved lions. And for some reason, she felt like they were majestic, whatever it was. Everything in Chanel has lions, right? She didn't like gold. She didn't like the color of gold. So she wanted things to be this different gold. So in Chanel, they use this specific gold, right? That she, there's a whole thing behind why she chose this gold and what she uses it for. And you can look up the house rules. Actually, I'll find the house rules and link them on the show page. But all these things, most people don't know. Like, most people that buy a Chanel bag have no clue. But what happens is in the beginning they're set, and they help build this brand around what you're trying to create, and eventually it will start to have a ripple effect, right? So people looked at this Chanel thing and saw the quality of it, and of course, so again, what is said, what is viewed, and how it's felt. So if you bought a Chanel bag for $20,000, that's a view, right? That it's worth $20,000. It looks good. It has all these qualities that she like handpicked and made sure it was of the top quality. If when people spoke about Chanel, it didn't give that luxury, you wouldn't buy it, right? And then if you bought a bag and it fell apart the first day, you would never buy another bag. So she and that whole team had to create this environment where everything that was seen by Chanel, and even me working with the brand, like I work with the global brand, they do not, like, they're very, very meticulous when it comes to every image that comes out of that brand anywhere in the world. So anything that's said has to go to the top level of, they have a global team, they have a local team, and then they have their regions. And the global team is what manages the brand, because they want to make sure that everything that comes out of Chanel, no matter where, what country, is on point with their brand. So I had to go up the ladder. I had to talk to the New York office, then I had to talk to the North America office, then I had to talk to the global office. And that's how you work with these big brands. And these big brands stay big brands because they protect their brand at that level, right? So how do you do that as a smaller business? You have to start thinking about, what is your visual? What is your talking points, or your text going to talk about? And then when people interact with you, are you holding up to those things, right? Because with Mass Ideation, for instance, right, I want to create this brand of high tech. You want the best technology, best strategy, best experience in creating your future. You're going to want to work with us, right? So, but what if when they come to the website doesn't have big brands and cool companies, right? And then am I really doing that? And what if they come to the website and the wording is not explaining the quality of stuff that we work on? And I struggle with this all the time. I'm always looking and trying to make sure that it is doing that, because I want to attract the type of customers I attract. So there'll be customers. I work with many different types of companies, but they're not all on my website. And that's because of brand, right? Like, I want to make sure that as I evolve and I think this through, I'm not showing clients that don't match the clients I want. And not to say that, if I take a client, it's like not the brand on brand. It's just because I'm still figuring this out. And as I figure it out, I'm keeping a certain level of brand on my site, right? And I that may change. I'm definitely, there's a thing with, not having, like, Coco Chanel's like 50, 60 years ago or something like that. So there's much time they had to build this brand. Mass Ideation has been around 10 years. These brands, they take time to figure this out. So for you, I would say, one of the first things is to check out a book like The Small Business Basics. Branding for Small Businesses. Again, it'll be a link. Think about those three things. What do you want people to see that coincides with your story? What story overall do you want them to know and tell themselves when they see your brand? And then how do you make sure when they interact with you, your brand is not lost? It stays on the level that you want it to be. And then, of course, the story is the main thing, right? It's all based on this story. So perfect your story. Make sure when people see you, the story that you want them to see is what they tell themselves, not the story that they create themselves, like what happened with Ferrari, right? Ferrari was able to change it though, right? By studying their brand and seeing what people thought, they were able to figure out a way of changing that thought. And that took time, right? So all of this stuff takes time. And the real key to this is thinking about it, right? If you don't think about it, people are just going to develop their own brand around their own story around your brand. And that is the worst thing you can do, right? Just not tell your story and let people create their own brand. And then every person can have a different idea of what you do. And I through my personal brand, I'm in that situation right now. I literally have friends that I've known 20 years that have no clue what I do. I was with one of my friends the other day, and he was like, Mike, I'm not gonna lie, I have no clue what you do. Do you even work anymore? I was like, yeah. He's like, so what do you do? And I even me, I was like, wow, I'm pretty sure most people just think I work on computers. Like, I fix computers, I make websites, right? So even for me, I'm like, okay, I need to develop my brand story. And that's where, I've been trying to do podcasts, speeches to start figuring out my brand, in live mode, right? Like, I'm going on stage figuring out my brand. I'm talking on a podcast figuring out my brand, and eventually I will. Right now, where my brand stands is I want to be known as the person that can make any idea happen. Whether it's a startup, whether it's an agency, whether it's a nonprofit, you have a good idea. I'm the person that you want to speak to make sure that it gets done. And that could happen in many different ways, right? It could happen as I bring my team, I bring my army of the best people in the world that I've worked with over years. And if you have a budget for them, I'll bring an army of the best. If you just want to work with me as a consultant, I can do that too. Or I can point you in the right direction. If you don't have the brand, you don't have the budget to deal with either my team or me, how could I help you in other ways? And that's where this podcast is here, right? Like, you can go off and study all this stuff and figure it out yourself. You can make your own websites. You can make your own apps. But what happens is, just like you can buy a $7 t-shirt, right? A black t-shirt, like me. I even though I work with these brands, you don't see me in these big brands. I'm not. That's not me, right? I believe that my own qualities promote my level to the world, not a brand, right? So I do have an Apple, but I have a PC. I have every type of computer because I am working in different worlds, so I need to be able to test things, but I do carry my Mac around mostly because it is the best thing for what I do. It handles what I do the best, so for my personal brand, I'm looking at how do I reinforce and show people that I am that person that can help make any idea possible. And then on my company side, I want them to see, okay, this is the company that can help me make my ideas. And my brand is that in mass ideation to certain people, not enough people. I get random calls from people all the time. Like, I was told to talk to you. You guys, somebody else told me you guys made it happen for them when they couldn't find anybody else who did. And the more and more we do that, the more that brand happens. But right now it's on a word of mouth, case by case basis. So I need to figure out how on mass ideation side, how to build that up. And I have a bunch of ideas on how to do that. And I'm working on those too. But on the personal brand, it's much more early. I've worked on the mass ideation brand for a long time. I really have only worked on my personal brand for a few years. But if I had to do it over, if I had to start over and I was just coming up, I would have worked on my personal brand first and the company brand second. Because your personal brand goes with you no matter where you go, company-wise, project-wise, even just walking around the world. And what I realized early on in my career was the people who I worked with, who were not even necessarily better than me in what I did, that worked their personal brand, they blew up way faster. And then when they created their company benefited from their personal brand. So they were able to land big clients. And then their company was a beneficiary of that personal brand. And then it was able to just take off on its own because it started out in a level that the personal brand was able to be the rocket. And you even see that now. Gary Vaynerchuk is a big one of that, right? Like he came up through his personal brand, and he created this company, and the company took off because he was huge already. And that's how I would do it if I were you right now. If you're starting right now, you're trying to figure out how to blow up your business, how to blow up whatever, I would start with your personal brand. How you start your personal brand? You have to put your face out there. You have to tell your own story. You have to put out content in different forms. And that's where, like podcasting, like I'm doing right now, there's video, there's text. You have to figure out, you have to go try to be in speaking engagements. You have to put yourself out there and tell your story. Once you do that, people will be drawn to you for your story. And how you tell your story is your why, right? So this is from my first podcast episode. Start with your why. Check out that book, check out that episode. Once you understand your why and you tell it to the world, you bring in more people that agree with that why. And that starts to grow your personal brand. Again, with me, my why is I believe that right now we're in the best time in the history of the world to create anything. So why would you not be trying to create something right now? I understand entrepreneurship is hard, but it's never been easier. How do you fully know that you're not an entrepreneur if you never try it? So what I want to do is, my personal brand is, I want to show people, look, I came from the Bronx. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to get a computer, learn some skills, and then I went on to work in the top companies. And then I realized I wanted to try to be an entrepreneur. And then I realized that was my calling. And I want to show people that may be thinking about taking a path towards entrepreneurship, the struggles that I had to learn, I want them to not have to learn them. I want to tell them up front and give them the option to continue trying without that one thing being the reason they quit. But of course, there's going to be other reasons why they may quit. And I have reasons every day why I may quit as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is hard, like I said. So that's my personal brand. I'm going around, I'm speaking, I want to create books, I want to create courses, I want to create all this stuff around that idea that no matter where you come from, your idea is possible. So that's my personal brand. On the mass ideation side, I want agencies, brands, and startups and nonprofits to know they can come to us for the best. And that's going to take some time for me to prove, and I'm on that path. So, again, I think for anyone starting, I would start with my personal brand. That means all your social media channels. Do more of yourself. Of course, create your company logo, brand, and all of that as well. But start with your personal. Start growing your personal brand and the company brand on the side. As put lion's share, 80-20, 80% your personal, 20% your company. And then as you grow it, as you grow your personal brand, your company brand. I did it the opposite. If you look, Mass Ideation has a lot more followers than me personally. And that is because I've worked on my personal brand first. I mean, my company brand first for years. Nobody even knew. Only people that knew were the people that would call me for work. But if you looked anywhere, you would know, you had no clue that I was the person behind that company, because I thought it would affect the visual of my brand. If you come to a place and you see, oh, they work with all these high-level brands, but then you see my face as a Puerto Rican, Hispanic in technology, which was not a thing, I believe that would hurt my brand. And that was, this society beating me down in a way. And now I think the opposite. I know the opposite, that my face shows that I have something that nobody else has. So again, it's a benefit, not a something that's going to hurt me. So that's where, again, hopefully this podcast helps you to feel the same way, helps you to think the same way. Your face, the uniqueness about you is why people would work with you. And you have to show who you are and make them want to be a part of your universe. And if they do, they're going to want to work with you. And if while they're working with you, it's a good experience and everything you say you were going to do, you do, and you make sure you hold their hand through the process, and you're not like, and not always you, right? Because what happens is you eventually create a company that does that, and Mass Ideation has to follow along with the brand that I push, because if somebody comes to interact with me and then I hand them off to my team, and my team, the experience falls off, they'll associate that with my brand. So I have to make sure everything I do is on the level of the brand I want to have, and make sure everybody is using that level, because if not, we all lose. So I'm going to end it there and just have, hopefully this starts the conversation. I'm going to do more about this. I would like more questions about it. All the people who asked me, let me know what you thought about this episode, and let me know, of course, any other things that people want me to cover, because right now I have, like I said, I don't really know what to cover. I just know my brand, now what the things I want to talk about and make sure I'm helping people with their ideas about. But as I create this content, what happens is people with ideas reach out and say, hey, I do have an idea, but I don't really know enough about branding. So that's what this episode came from, people reaching out like that. So if you have things that you want to understand more, reach out and I'll create content around it, and hopefully it helps you. Thanks for listening to the Miguel Sanchez Universe. Hopefully that was helpful. And please share and subscribe to the podcast, and hope to see you back next time. Thank you.